I'm Debra Disman, and I am very honored to be in the Art of the Book Infinity. I'm honored to be asked to share about my work. I'm based in Santa Monica, California, the Los Angeles area. I have a studio. I'm a local artist in residence at 18th Street Art Center in Santa Monica, which is where I am right now to give this talk. And I'm thrilled to be here. I was very honored to have two pieces selected for the show, and I'm going to discuss those pieces in the context of my work in general. And I think anyone who's been working on Zoom knows how it takes a little bit getting used to. You're basically sitting and talking to either a small or a larger version of yourself. So we're all getting used to that. So I work in the form of the book, of course, and also in sculptural forms that sort of are inspired by the book as a structure, but also inspired by the book conceptually and simply in terms of working with the material. One of the first books that I made that kind of started out the series, which is the two books that I have in the show, or I guess you would call would be part of the series, is this book here, and it's called Hangout. It has an accordion spine and two covers and soft canvas pages, and everything is stitched, and a lot of the string, it's hemp cord, is essentially hanging out of the book. And for the book series that I've been working on since about 2017, it's really more monochromatic. I've done a lot of work in color, and I've even worked as a color consultant. I love color, but I'm really focusing on texture and the tactile and the haptic with these works. So I have colors that are either the same or interrelated together. And I'm really looking at how that creates a texture and how that creates a visual story. And I worked very much in this white to ivory tone. And I've also done a series of works in black. And one of those works is in the show. It's called Maximum Security. And the first work I did in black is kind of a sibling piece. It's hard to see. It's the same size and dimensions and essential structure as Hangout, and it's called Black Hangout. It has, again, it's hard to see in the black works. But the piece that I did that's in the show called Maximum Security is also made of these same materials, canvas, with black pieces. Everything is painted in black acrylic paint. Hemp cord is used. I use an acid-free adhesive, pH, acid-free. And sometimes I cover the piece with the mulberry paper, which is very cloth-like. And I may paint that if the piece is black. So Maximum Security actually has windows cut out of it, and it uses the strings to indicate bars. So it is speaking to incarceration, the prison system, and I guess more broadly to issues of feeling in prison, whatever that might mean to the individual or to the viewer. I didn't start the book. I usually do not start with specific ideas, certainly not political ideas or even social ideas. I start with kind of just a general feeling and an impetus, and then I move forward, and the piece kind of starts to express things over time. So I had worked a little bit with the cutout windows that you see in both covers and in the pages of Maximum Security. And I became intrigued with how the hanging threads or strings, again, it's hempcord, looked through these windows. And how, you know, in many areas, especially in urban areas, you're going to see bars on the windows, no matter what neighborhood you're in, for people feeling like they need to protect themselves. And we use these bars to keep people out and perhaps to keep ourselves in as well. And it requires a lot of painting when you're working on canvas and natural colored materials to make it all black, because aside from the cord, the hemp cord, it's not integral all the way through. So every time I was punching a hole, I used an awl to punch all the holes to create this surface, to weave the strings through. You would see the white of the material. I use bookboard, raw canvas, and so forth, which are not black. And they have to be painted and continually painted to get that all over black feeling. And I think it's interesting, it's hard to see here, but you see these two kind of mirror image books. And the black one does tend to look heavier and just physically heavier than the white, because that is an issue of color, of being a darker, heavier color. Also, our associations with black as being, you know, night, and even associations which are not positive or negative or pejorative, but, you know, perhaps elegance, perhaps mystery, perhaps something that is hard to know, etc. So it was very interesting to see Maximum Security develop. And I used different kinds of hemp cord. I used some that were treated with the varnish, polished with wax to make them easier to sew with, and they were thinner and had a different way of hanging. And I used untreated on Maximum Security, so they had a different feeling. And then I created texture and a visual sense also by weaving those, by essentially sewing those threads through. I'm just showing on the white because it's easier to see. Stringing them in and out on top of a textured surface. So layering texture on top of texture to tell a story that sort of reveals itself as it goes along. I'll go on to speak about the other piece that I am honored to have in the show. It's called Prairie, and it is very involved with stitching. Again, the piece is, it's not white, it's not black. It is kind of a natural, you know, what we would call, quote unquote, a natural color. It's you know, a little bit like the color of wood or paper bags and so forth. And it has the same structure with that accordion spine, the covers, and the pages are not canvas, they're stiff paper, and everything is covered with not multi-layered paper, but a quote unquote natural colored tissue that is crumpled up and torn into strips and then adhered again with the pH neutral adhesive to completely cover the surface. And I think what I didn't mention before is most of these spines are created with heavy duty watercolor paper that is folded in the direction of the grain of the paper to create these spines. And they are glued to the covers made of bookboard and then covered usually with some kind of paper that creates a texture. Again, strips of paper that have been crumpled up and then smoothed out and then adhered to the surface. And Prairie, which is the other piece that I'm honored to have in the show, is a little bit different because it's horizontal. And that really gives a piece a very different feel. Most books that we see and read are on the vertical, and that's our association in the Western world. But Prairie is horizontal, and I knew as I started working on it, again, it's made of bookboard and then sort of an unbleached tissue that is adhered, which is covering both the folded watercolor spine and the paperboard pages. And then it's not hemp cord, it's like a jute cord, again, that is a quote unquote natural color. So it's very involved with the lines and the stitching and the idea of a vast kind of landscape or horizon. And it really does harken back to the Midwest landscape that I grew up in, even though we had very strong seasons and we had a lot of sunshine and we had green, but also we would have certain times in the fall when the leaves would fall off the trees, and you would have this this landscape. And I was thinking about what it might have looked like. It's not literal, but before too much civilization was built up on the prairie, with the long lines of the homesteaders' fields and so forth. And I went to school for 3 years at the University of Iowa, and whenever you would see the surrounding landscape, you would see these long furrows of the surrounding farms and those lines. So I was also experimenting about what it would be like to simply not just have the thread or the jute cord be stitched, but have it, have the stitching end and then have it sort of flow right off the edge of the book, of the surfaces, of the edges, essentially, so that the edge of the page or the cover didn't really end the book. The thread or the material that composed the stitching would continue. And again, it feels more potent to me to work in a monochromatic way to really emphasize the textures and the feeling, and not get into a lot of color. I have done a series of books with painted pages and painted denim and canvas before this series, where I did use a lot of color. Color is a very powerful element, and I felt that by minimizing it in the sense of making it monochromatic, you could see all of the different colors within the overall color. You could see a lot of different blacks, a lot of different whites or ivories, a lot of different sort of beiges or natural colors in the case of Prairie. And I wanted the sense going horizontally of the lines of the field that would just continue through those threads. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to show with all the other incredible artists that are in this particular exhibition, and also the generosity of the book arts world to embrace someone such as myself, who is working very conceptually and structurally. And the fact of an open definition of the artist's book or the unique one-of-a-kind book, or the book itself as an art form to be embraced as something very broad. And it's so thrilling. I feel like if I ever go completely into sculpture and there's less association with books, that I want to stay in the book arts world because I love the people and the institutions who are involved with it so much. The libraries and all the conservators and printers and all the support people who help make all of our shows happen. So I want to thank Allie and her staff and everybody who's involved with Bookers Art Affinity for all the work that you do and giving us all this amazing opportunity. And I'm sure the next time we all work on Zoom, we'll be much more savvy and much more produced. But I think right now it's kind of fun to have it rough, just like some of these book sculptures. So thank you very much.